Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And this video is part 2 of my ongoing exercise to reimagine a fully rebooted Ultimate Marvel. Now if you haven't seen my first 2 videos on this, I highly recommend you watch those. They lay out what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm both arguing for a full reboot of Ultimate Marvel and I'm presenting a foundation on which to build it. With part 1, I didn't get too deep into major characters or plot points. The purpose for that video was to set up a new history for this new Ultimate Universe. And I think that story could be told over the course of a single giant-sized issue, one Marvel could use to introduce people to this new world. Everything that comes after that will be bigger and bolder. And this is where the true substance of a rebooted Ultimate Universe will manifest. Like its first incarnation, this new Ultimate Marvel must set a particular tone with its first round of comics. The original Ultimate line began with Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men. They helped establish the overall tone, style, and aesthetic for Ultimate. A wholly rebooted universe needs to do the same. But I strongly believe it must take a different approach. That's why, in my particular vision for a rebooted Ultimate, the Avengers should be the inaugural series. And I think it kinda has to be. Because let's face it, there's an entire generation of Marvel fans who grew up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. To them, the apex of Marvel isn't Spider-Man or the X-Men. It's the Avengers. And I say that as a diehard X-Men fan. And I think this new Ultimate Universe should lean into that. Make those first dozen issues feel like the first Avengers movie. Set the right tone and get people excited about the potential of this universe. That kind of story could take many forms. I can easily imagine the first issue being hyped up like a blockbuster movie, which is something Marvel does a lot with its comics. But this new incarnation of Avengers will be different in a few critical ways. For one, I don't think it should be called Ultimates like its predecessor. Because like it or not, the MCU has made the Avengers one of the biggest brands in all of entertainment. This new Ultimate Universe needs to leverage that to the utmost. Plus, it would help this version stand out much more from the previous Ultimate comics. And that's important too because any rebooted Ultimate Universe must distance itself from the previous version as much as possible. Now, some of that is necessary for the sake of a coherent story, but mostly it's to avoid one of the biggest pitfalls of the original Ultimate series. You see, the characters we saw in the original Ultimates, well, they were assholes. There's just no other way to put it. Yes, they were distinct. Yes, they were very different from their mainline counterparts. But, by and large, these characters were assholes. Even Captain America. Now, there was a creative reason for that. The original Ultimates writer, Mark Millar, chose to present a grittier, more realistic take on superheroes. Yes, they were still heroes, but they were also very flawed humans, much more so than previous iterations. And flawed humans do tend to be assholes. Millar just took it much further than anyone could have imagined. Now, I don't want to get into the particular merits of that story, or why it just wouldn't work in a rebooted Ultimate Universe. I'll just say that, for this new universe, it cannot and should not use that approach. For one, it really wouldn't fit the current cultural landscape. Millar's Ultimates was very much a product of its time, and certain parts of it haven't aged particularly well. If you've read those comics, you know the parts I'm talking about. This new Ultimate Universe must be a very different product. I believe it should make the case that there's still a place for superheroes in this world. There's still a place for that unique idealism that have been a mainstay of superhero comics for decades. An Ultimate Avengers comic wouldn't attempt to hide from that world and its many complications. It just has to take the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, and put them in the middle of those complications. Then let the flawed world around them react. But how would that play out? Well, this is where I start sharing my personal headcanon. Like I did in the previous video with the origins of this universe, I'll try to keep things general. I'll also try to set up certain characters and concepts. My goal this time is to envision how the first major arc of a rebooted Ultimate Avengers could play out. Please keep that in mind as I once again channel the spirit of Uwadu the Watcher and offer my own personal narrative of how the Ultimate Avengers first assemble. It starts with a major discovery. On a research ship navigating the Arctic seas, Sharon Carter, an up-and-coming agent with S.H.I.E.L.D., leads an ambitious expedition. With her are a couple of young researchers, Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons. They're searching the seafloor for something everyone else says is lost to history. Sharon's own grandmother and the original S.H.I.E.L.D. founder, Peggy Carter, told her it would never be found. She even went so far as to say it shouldn't be found and be left to the whims of history. But Sharon believes otherwise. Having grown up hearing stories about the heroism of Captain America, including the one that had him disappear over the Arctic in the waning days of the war, she thinks the world needs to find him. But most of her fellow S.H.I.E.L.D. agents disagree. They frequently point out that times have changed. They've seen how the world has moved on from the days of Captain America. Sure, there were still plenty of threats out there. Hydra, AIM, the Ten Rings, renegade mutants, and even superpowered beings who think they're gods. But S.H.I.E.L.D. has only grown and expanded over the decades. So far, they've been able to handle these rising threats. Having developed the alien technology that crashed nearly a century ago, S.H.I.E.L.D. has become the ultimate global defense force, one every nation has come to rely on to fight the battles its armies could not. Under the leadership of Nicholas Fury III, the adopted grandson of Nick Fury Sr., the world has remained relatively stable. Sharon Carter knows this. She even celebrates it. But just as Fitz and Simmons convince her that she'd be better off in the field, they finally find it. After decades of searching, they find the frozen body of Captain America. And on top of that, they make another remarkable discovery. Despite being frozen for decades, he's still alive. Flash forward several months. The world is still amazed and obsessed with a reborn Captain America. While he struggles to adapt to a new world and a new century, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. welcome that distraction, because they just uncovered something big. His top agent in Russia, Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, just uncovered something that has been hidden and closely guarded since the end of World War II. An exotic piece of alien tech, one believed to have caused the Tunguska explosion of 1908, was smuggled out of a secure facility by a Hydra-affiliated agent named Crossbones. Black Widow, with help of her colleague, Clint Hawkeye Barton, confront Crossbones and manage to take the device. But in doing so, it somehow turns itself on. They quickly bring it to S.H.I.E.L.D., where their best scientists start analyzing it. But the device only becomes more unstable. Fury gets so desperate that he even lets the notorious Bruce Banner work on it, a rare occurrence since his struggles to contain his monstrous Hulk form had caused S.H.I.E.L.D. many headaches in the past. Like every other high-ranking scientist in S.H.I.E.L.D., Banner knows how this crashed alien tech has affected the course of history. He also knows much more than the public knows. But before its day, there was never any indication that the Kree and Skrulls were still out there. Most have concluded that they're all extinct. And after some careful tinkering, Banner makes a startling discovery. This device is a beacon, a signal to the Kree homeworld Hala. And, much to the surprise of all those watching, someone finally answers. He calls himself Ronan the Accuser. And upon receiving the signal, he has a message for Earth. You have something that doesn't belong to you. You have stolen technology that rightly belongs to the Kree. Technology they badly need to reawaken the Supreme Intelligence and rebuild their once proud empire. And they're coming back for it. Almost immediately, S.H.I.E.L.D. goes on high alert. But the beacon has already sealed their fate. Throughout the solar system, long dormant wreckage from Kree ships come online. Among them are Kree sentries, the first wave of attack in any Kree onslaught. Before S.H.I.E.L.D. can turn off the device, the sentries arrive, they all converge on the beacon and destroy the Triskeleton, the once proud headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury and a few others, including Black Widow and Hawkeye, barely survive. Bruce Banner, having turned into the Hulk to destroy the sentries, smashes his way out and ultimately disappears. This destruction constitutes a threat in the highest order, one unlike anything S.H.I.E.L.D. has ever faced before. But Nick Fury has long worried about such a threat, and to prepare for such a scenario, he put together a secret project, which he calls the Avengers Initiative. Feeling he has no other choice, he leaves Maria Hill, his second in command, in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. to keep it operating, so he can put the initiative into effect. Together with Black Widow and Hawkeye, they reach out to a number of predetermined candidates, each equipped with a unique specialty. One of them includes Tony Stark, a billionaire playboy alcoholic industrialist. He once made weapons for the military, but after a traumatic experience in a war zone, he changed the direction of his company. Now, the public calls him Iron Man after developing the Iron Man Legion, a series of robotic mechanical suits that revolutionized the world's workforce. Fury now wants him to put weapons into those suits to help them combat this new threat, something Stark has long resisted, wanting nothing more to do with weapons. For this reason, and others he wasn't sober enough to articulate, he rejects Fury's request to join the Avengers. This list also leads them to Hank Pym and his ex-wife, Janet Van Dyne. They were once the power couple of the Pym-Tech Empire, developing advanced, size-altering suits that utilized the revolutionary Pym particles. But an ugly divorce, a failed rollout of their Ultron prototypes, and a series of mental breakdowns from Hank destroyed their once promising careers. But despite Fury's urging to put aside their past issues, they too reject joining the initiative, especially if it means working together once more. The list also leads him to a mysterious recluse who believes himself to be Thor, the Norse god of thunder. But not long ago, he was just Donald Blake, a young paramedic dating his co-worker, Jane Foster. Then, an encounter with a mysterious hammer that washed up on the coast of Norway changed all that. Now, he claims he was always Thor. Donald Blake was just an illusion, one cast by his devious brother Loki to keep him from ever returning to Asgard. And returning home, along with consuming copious amounts of mead, is his primary goal. As such, he too rejects an offer to join the Avengers Initiative. But at the top of the list was always Steve Rogers, Captain America himself. When Nick Fury comes to him, Steve is still a man out of time, overwhelmed by a world he no longer understands. He's come to believe that the world doesn't need Captain America anymore. He tries to carve a new life for himself, retreating to a cabin in upstate New York, away from the media and the modern world. And at first, he is not inclined to join another war. And as Nick Fury leaves, it seems like the Avengers Initiative is already dead on arrival. But then, Sharon Carter, the same woman who found him, tells Steve what Captain America means to the world. She reminds him of why he still matters. At first, he's not swayed, but the more she speaks, the more he remembers what he fought for and why he fought for it. And just before Fury departs, Steve decides to join him, adding that civilian life was just too boring. Together, they return to the helicarrier, an experimental flying fortress that S.H.I.E.L.D. only ever used in the biggest of emergencies. There, Captain America's old S.H.I.E.L.D. and uniform are there waiting for him. He learns of the coming Kree threat, and he believes the best way to prepare is to send out a clear message, one that everyone on Earth will hear, be they soldier, civilian, mutant, or monster, warning them of the coming invasion. But the powers that be shoot it down. General Thunderbolt Ross ultimately renders the decision. But while Steve makes an impassioned plea, the Kree arrive. Ronan the Accuser attacks Earth with a massive ship and a fleet of new Kree soldiers. Leading them into battle is Ultimus, one of the few Kree generals to survive the Annihilation Wave. And thanks to the beacon, they know S.H.I.E.L.D. is Earth's main defense force, and he attacks it head-on, launching wave after wave at every shield facility on all corners of the planet. In mere hours, every shield facility, even with all their crashed alien tech with decades of refinement, falls under the onslaught. And the Kree's elite forces go for the helicarrier, led by Ultimus himself. The Kree general takes no prisoners, shows no mercy, and makes clear that humanity getting this technology was a mistake. In his mind, he's just doing them a favor, destroying them before they destroy themselves. Many brave men and women fall. But Captain America still fights back, alongside Black Widow, Hawkeye, Agent Carter, Nick Fury, and Maria Hill. For a while, they are able to hold Ultimus off, even as he brings down the ship. But before they can crash, Cap has Hill activate the communications array. He plans to send a message to the entire world, despite General Ross's direct orders. It's both a call and a plea, a rallying cry for all those to stand against this Kree invasion. Cap's bold words reach all those who rejected Fury's request for help. Tony Stark sees it as he's watching the invasion play out, still drunk from his latest bender. Bruce Banner hears it while hitchhiking across the road, still trying to keep the monster within him at bay. Hank and Janet hear it too, prompting them to break out their old Ant-Man and Wasp suits that they swore they'd never wear. Thor hears it from a Norwegian pub, just as he's finishing his latest pint of mead. They hear these brave words from a living legend, and ultimately, they decide to act. And even those Fury never sought out hear it. Warriors in the hidden kingdom of Wakanda, mystics in the hidden city of Kamertage, mutants hiding in various ghettos and sanctuaries, even an up-and-coming masked vigilante from Queens. And while the message plays out, the final showdown unfolds in downtown Manhattan. Ultimus has Cap, Fury, and the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. surrounded. He orders Ronan to prepare the Psych Magnetron, the ultimate Kree weapon of mass destruction. But first, he insists on taking out Captain America personally. However, just as he's about to launch this attack, a flying hammer hits him in the head. And from above, a transport ship piloted by Hank Giant Man Pym arrives with Wasp, Iron Man, and Thor. Ultimus attempts to shoot them out of the sky before they land. Then, one figure jumps out of the ship, a scrawny figure that quickly grows into a raging Hulk. He lands, and from there, he smashes Ultimus across the face, clearing the way for the others. At that fateful moment, Cap issues a single order. Avengers, assemble. The rest of the team lands alongside Cap, stares down Ultimus, and prepares to fight. Enraged, Ultimus calls in for reinforcements. All over the world, Kree sentries that had been decimating every army on Earth take off and converge on New York. But that still gives the Avengers plenty of time to hit him hard. In addition, their own reinforcements arrive, including an experimental plane flown by a renegade Air Force pilot, Captain Carol Danvers. Ultimus, too stubborn to retreat or give in, sends the signal to Ronan to activate the Psych Magnetron. They can already see it in the sky as a growing light, one that quickly outshines the sun. In that moment, with Captain America's inspiring words still echoing in her head, Carol Danvers decides to act. With help from Thor, she pushes her aircraft to its limit and ascends into suborbital space. She then activates every weapon system on board. And, despite a warning from Nick Fury that this could be a one-way mission, she doesn't hesitate. She flies right into the danger, even as the Psych Magnetron activates. From below, there's just a large flash. Then there's an eerie silence. Suddenly, every Kree sentry abruptly deactivates. Every weapon Ultimus has in his possession shuts down. Suddenly, he's powerless. He has no more forces to command, no weapons with which to fight. Yet still, he remains defiant, prepared to take down humanity with his bare hands if he has to. But he doesn't get the chance. Captain America, still bloodied and bruised, musters enough strength to knock him out with one punch. That effectively ends the battle. The day is won. The Kree invasion has been thwarted. As the Avengers stand within the ruins, they hear cheering. Because, on a day like no other, when S.H.I.E.L.D. and the armies of the world could not save them, the Avengers assembled. They became the heroes the world needed, and would need moving forward. Now, excuse me while I catch my breath. I hope I was able to paint a vivid enough picture, one fans of both the comics and movies could appreciate. I think if this played out in the first dozen issues of a fully rebooted Ultimate Avengers, it would excite a new generation of comic fans. It would lay a foundation just like the Ultimates did in the early 2000s. Maybe the final pages would tease Tony Stark setting the Avengers up in a mansion owned by his company. It could also show Fury rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. with a new directive, much to the chagrin of the General Rosses of the world. It could even tease that Carol Danvers survived her suicide run, setting the stage for her to emerge as the new Captain Marvel. There's just so much you could build from a story like this. Its structure is simple, building heavily on the basics of your typical hero's journey. But the most important part is how it sets the tone for this new version of Ultimate. And like I said before, that tone should go out of its way to set itself apart from its predecessor. That means these characters are not just asshole versions of their mainline counterparts. This new Ultimate universe embodies the best of what these characters can be. Elements from the movies, the classic comics, and the cartoons can all play a part. If Ultimate Marvel is to once again be the gold standard, then it must channel the best from every source. Again, what I just described is my own personal take. We can safely assume that there are people working for Marvel and Disney right now who are many times more talented than I'll ever be. I'm sure they could come up with something much more epic than what I just laid out. And whatever form it takes, it could help set this new version of Ultimate Marvel up for years to come. But the Ultimate Avengers would just be the first wave in this new Ultimate series. It helps establish who the mightiest heroes in this world are, but they won't be the only ones wielding superpowers. And that's why, for the next part of this reimagined Ultimate Universe, I'll tackle a new version of the X-Men. Being a lifelong X-Men fan myself, expect me to put extra effort into this one. If I'm going to make the case for a rebooted Ultimate Universe, then the X-Men can be nothing short of astonishing. Stay tuned for that video, and in the meantime, please tell me what you think of this Ultimate Vision thus far. I'd love to get feedback. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.